Hi, everybody. Welcome to another broadcast. And tonight I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about an incredible film, College Behind Bars, which is a documentary done by a dear friend, Lynn Novick, profiling the Barred Prison Initiative and this incredible educational program that takes place for incarcerated individuals and the extraordinary experience that they've had. So we're joined tonight by Lynn, the filmmaker, and a celebrated documentarian, one of the true treasures of documentary film in our country today, and one of the students for the program, Jule Hall, who will share a little bit of his own story. And to get you an idea of what this is really all about, what the film's all about, we're going to preview a 30-second trailer of it to bring you right up to speed. So here you go.
Prison is here to punish us. It's not about rehabilitating. It just isn't.
This is a full-time, total commitment. When that door closes, you're at Bard College.
It's hard, it's difficult, but it's rewarding. I gotta prove that I'm worthy of this.
They're trying to pay back to society.
It changes your whole outlook.
I realized I learned something. That is where transformation happens. That is what stops people from coming back to prison.
College Behind Bars, Monday, November 20th.
Lynn, Jule, thank you so very much for joining us. I'm really grateful to you both and excited for the conversation. But Lynn, just give us a little bit of an overview and background. How did you get drawn to doing a documentary about what was taking place in our prison system and Barred Prison Initiative in particular?
A number of years ago, my colleague Sarah Bopstein and I, she's produced with us, with Ken Burns and me, many projects, including the Vietnam War, we were invited to give a talk inside a prison in a classroom to talk about one of the films we made. And we went into the prison and we sat down with the students there and we had the most interesting conversation we've ever had about any film we've ever made. They were the smartest, most thoughtful, most engaged, and most intellectually sophisticated audience we'd ever spoken to. And when we left the prison that night, that was in 2012, 8 years ago, we looked at each other and we said, oh my God, we had no idea this kind of discourse was happening in this place. We need to do something to show the world what's happening here. And so fast forward a little while, it took us about a year to get permission. We spent 4 years filming students in this extraordinary program called the Barred Prison Initiative, which is part of Bard College. They get a liberal arts education that is the equal, if not superior, to anything on any college campus in America. And we got to know some extremely impressive and wonderful people, one of whom is here with us today, who were going through the experience of getting a college degree while incarcerated. And the film is called College Behind Bars, and it came out last fall.
And it's fantastic. I've seen it a number of times, and it deserves all the accolades it has achieved because it's an extraordinary story of folks like Jule. So Jule, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the Barred Prison Initiative and your experience through it.
Well, I was in prison for a while trying to find ways to, rebuild myself and, deal with some of the issues that I was facing. And I knew college was one of the ways through which I can examine myself. So when the opportunity came to enroll in Barred Prison Initiative, I jumped right at it. It was a community, even inside of prison. I loved it because we had a way of interacting with each other inside of the classroom that wasn't like prison itself. So, I was very enthused and I jumped right in, and it had a profound effect on me and how I see the world.
Can you tell me a little bit about when you say that experience with that community was different than the one inside prison itself? Just flesh that out a little bit for me. What does that mean? How is it different?
So in prison, there's a culture, a subculture about what is right and what is wrong and what we should and should not do. So one of the things that we in Bard really emphasize amongst the student body is that all the stuff that goes on in prison stays out in prison. We're in a classroom, you are a student, you are no longer a prisoner. So therefore, when we're in a deep debate in class and a person does not want to be reproached, we would say, listen, this is part of the student atmosphere, for you to listen to a view that isn't similar to your own, and that culture really had a electrifying effect on everyone because, as we show in the film, we became some of the best debaters and being more open to other people's views. And that's kind of unheard of in prison.
And how is that culture, how is it cultivated? How is it enforced? How do how do you create that inside that community?
Well, we have an orientation that's led by the student prisoners, and that's where most of the new students have an orientation towards, listen, this is a separate space. This is a space for you to build your potential, not to, conform to the rules of the norms that we have inside the prison yard. So to answer your question more specifically, it was basically a group of elder classmen. When I got into the program, there was about 5 or 6 elder classmen that sat with me, spoke with me, helped me to see what I would expect. And I was fortunate to take on the same role to other new students that came into the program, whereas I would tell them, listen, this is rigorous study. This is how you set up your schedule. This is what's expected of you. And this is what we don't do in here. A lot of the stuff that occurs in the prison yard and in prison, this isn't the space for that. This is the space for you to build your potential.
So Lynn, tell us just a little bit about what BPI is. And then I got a million other questions for you. So
okay. Well, Bard is a liberal arts college in upstate New York. And 20 years ago, a young undergraduate started the program, and they started bringing professors in to work with students. And it became a fully accredited BA granting, bachelor's degree granting program. They operate in 6 prisons in New York State. They have more than 300 students at any given time. They've had something like 600 graduates have completed their degrees and been released and come home. And their recidivism rate is 4% compared to the national average of 50 to 60%. So just by the numbers, it's extraordinarily successful. And, I think it's showing the untapped potential that lies inside our prisons and in underserved and underprivileged communities as well. So one of my favorite lines in the film is one of the students says, when he tries to talk to friends about why they should apply, he always says, you don't know what it's like till you get into the classroom with great professors and they start showing you how smart you are. And I think that's a profound insight into what the program does. Jule.
And if I may add to that, some of the things that we are engaged with BPI are the same exact things that students are required to do in the normal school environment. We take exams to get in, we matriculate, and then we also have to complete a senior project that is research, written, and presented to a panel of professors on your own.
And that's a year-long 100-page project. So I have to say, I graduated from a fancy Ivy League school a number of years ago. My senior project was 20 pages, and I didn't have to present it. I just handed it in. I think this is a very rigorous, extremely rigorous program.
And how do people get in?
They take the exam.
And
it's an essay test, basically. No multiple choice bubble test.
And Lynn, walk me through this, because obviously I'm a huge fan, as you know, a huge fan of your work, but I would think, and Jule, you can correct my formulation of this question, but one of the things that comes about in the film, right, is you have some real, I mean, you're living in this experience, or you get a look at what life is like for your students. But there's I would expect a bit of a gulf when you start when Jule, you say, okay, you got these celebrated documentarians that want to come in and film this and turn it into a movie, to the extent that a lot of film and documentary filmmaking is about establishing that trust and having that open conversation and open space. Then how do you get there, given just the I assume the barriers that would be put up by folks in that program, but that aren't necessarily all that excited about, wouldn't be necessarily excited about having their stories necessarily broadcast on an award-winning documentary. Like, how do you
I think like anything, it takes a while, and you have to spend time and get to know people and have them get to know you. So Jule and I met in 2014, and we had several conversations, maybe 3 or 4, before we ever he would, be sure he'll speak about it. But I think it was just a sense of being present and being curious and wanting to get to know people and being really upfront. People would often say, what's your argument? What's the movie going to say? What are you going to prove? And Sarah and I would say, we're here to tell your story, if you will let us. So you tell us what the movie should say. We don't know. We're just here to see what's happening and try to collect this material.
And Jule,
then
did you
yeah.
Did you believe her?
Oh, definitely, because just like she said, Lynn had the access to us. She came in, she spoke with us before any cameras came in. We sat, we talked. I got to meet her beautiful daughter, Eliza. Eliza and I discussed science, you know, and we become great friends since then. But nonetheless, we had a space where I got to know Lynn as a person and to be able to build a relationship to whereas when it was time for the cameras to come, it was just one additional step in that friendship.
And I'll just say on behalf of Sarah and everyone who worked on the project, this film wouldn't exist without the stories that Jule and the other students shared with us. And I think there's nothing more courageous, really, or very few things more courageous than telling your story to a camera and, you know, ultimately to the world. And some of the stories are really painful and difficult. People spoke about things that they don't often speak about, their backgrounds and their hopes for the future. Just all kinds of really intense, powerful, and profound things were said in front of a camera. And we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, and Joe, I would just add to that, one of the reasons why we were so forthcoming was because the Bard students knew something special was going on amongst us in class. Me in particular, I was in prison for 22 years. I saw guys in the prison yard who were engaged in all types of negativity. But when they became Bard students, they were some of the most articulate, morally standard, innovative people that I've known. And I felt, wow, the world needs to see this.
Wow. So what did you study? What was your area of focus?
Mine was German studies.
German studies? How did you pick German studies?
It was a dare. It was a dare. My classmates and I took a German lit in translation, and we had the misfortune to complain about it. So, wow, this is a terrible translation. This doesn't even sound like English. And the professor challenged us. He said, you know, I teach German. If you want to learn German, you can read it and tell if it's a good translation or not. And that just led to a affinity with Germany and my senior project and just really examining myself through the lens of Germany and its struggles and its achievements.
And so you came out with a degree in German studies?
Yes.
And how's your German?
Nicht so gut. I'm besser. Ein bisschen besser.
Sounds great to me, as far as I can tell. Tell me, Jule, a little bit about how this compares to the other academic opportunities and educational opportunities behind the wall.
It does not compare. It exceeds. So I had been incarcerated when college programs were removed from prison in 1995. So I saw the void that not having access to higher education in prison left inside a prison. You know, many people were in states of despair, of laziness, of just really not being in a constructive atmosphere. There were GED programs, there were vocational programs, but there was nothing challenging if you had your GED or your high school diploma. There was nothing that would challenge you. But once the college programs came in and we got to engage with the literature arts, history, philosophy, there was a level of challenging us to become our better selves, particularly through writing, because I hadn't done much writing in my life before I came to prison. And once I got involved, the emphasis was on writing clearly and writing in a persuasive manner.
And what are you up to now?
Now I work for the Ford Foundation, where I conduct data analysis and strategy development for the Gender, Racial, and Ethnic Justice Unit. Some of the work we engage is with decarceration, advancing gender and reproductive justice, as well as immigrant rights. So I have like a work day that consists of things I'm really passionate about and my impact experience can speak to.
And are you in touch with any of the other alumni from Bard?
Oh, we have a flourishing community, not only in New York, but globally. And I'm so fortunate. It's so interesting, Joe, because a lot of us didn't get into the program with the idea, hey, I'm gonna be out soon and working for the Ford Foundation. to see now that, we have people working in philanthropy, entrepreneurs, in public health, to see people, really realize their potential is so phenomenal. And we keep a great network where we help many more students who are being released from prison.
So you mentioned realizing your potential. Lynn, walk us through a little bit. I don't want to give away too much here, but you mentioned, and Jule, you mentioned some of the students there became pretty good debaters. I think there's a story.
Yes, we found out that the Bars Initiative had a debate union. It was the one extracurricular activity that they could have in that context. And so we started filming them in 2014, and they beat University of Vermont. And then they lost to West Point, but they had beaten them before. It's twice a year other colleges come into the prison to debate, and they spend many months preparing. And in the fall of 2015, the debate team came from Harvard. And the topic was about whether public schools should deny admission to undocumented children, a very important topical subject. And the BARD team had to take the argument that, the more conservative argument, that yes, public schools should deny admission. So this was probably not a point of view that most of them believed. And they just really, they killed it. They beat Harvard, and it was quite a moment. It became a viral story around the world. And it was a really beautiful moment to see, the recognition they were getting really as underdogs to accomplish this in this space with the resources they had available. And they were really, really impressive, and they are impressive. They've gone on to beat Cambridge, University of Pennsylvania, and Duke, among other schools. They've only lost, I think, 2 or 3 times in the last 5 years.
Only lost 2 or 3 times. And Jule can do it in German. You'll smoke me in that. I wanted to turn real quick, because not only obviously, again, is this an extraordinary program, but we're facing a number of kind of areas of crisis here at the moment with regards to a population behind the wall and incarceration writ large, and a long overdue debate around whether our country's criminal justice system is in fact just or fair. And we have, as you both know, not just by far the highest rates of incarceration in the world, period, and the largest prison population. What we also, so we've got that criminal justice argument that we're going on that I think BPI and the film shows so beautifully. Well, we've got the added challenge at the moment of COVID-19, and the fact that COVID-19 is particularly devastating for more vulnerable populations, but particularly folks in densely populated communities where you can't experience social distancing, X, Y, and Z, and is literally could not be more problematic than for a population behind that wall. So I wanted to just hear from both of you, if you have one, Jule, from your perspective, understanding your experience there, and if you're in touch with folks that are still behind the wall, what they must be feeling at the moment, knowing that this is happening outside, knowing that if it comes inside and it might already be here, how fearful that must make people, and how people would respond to it. And then Lynn, just from a systemic perspective, kind of what this means and what we need to do about it. Jule, take it first.
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough the light that having college and prison brings to people who in particular want to change themselves, who want to do something constructive. Prison is a very monotonous place, and college and prison provides people with the space to engage each other. But COVID-19 has directly attacked face-to-face education, group learning, some of the key elements that were central, not only in the debate team, but just in our way of operating in BARD itself. I learned not only from my professors, but from being in proximity to my classmates. So, now we're at a state where college in prison has come to a screeching halt. No classes are being conducted, no group learning is being conducted. And for me, that's the quality of the education, to be able to interact and engage with your professors. I've spoken with a few people who are still inside, and they would say the same thing. It feels like a light has been removed from them, or the breath has been taken from them, one other said, because they are essentially on 23-hour lockdown with books. They can engage their minds and themselves, but not the level of group learning and face-to-face interaction that is crucial to quality education.
And that matters in terms of your own educational path, but also fulfillment and trying to make that transition from somebody, an incarcerated individual, to somebody eventually outside with the platform to be able to give back, right?
Exactly. Like I said, you'll see, I don't want to give too much up, but you will see that what was instrumental in the Harvard debate was the fact that the students could gather together in the classroom and throw ideas off each other, you know?
Yeah,
so
the moots matter, right? The moots,
yes.
right. I mean, it's a great series in the film. But Lynn, talk to me a little bit then from the research you've done, but also just the understanding of the structures here, what this also means from a kind of a structural level.
Yeah, well, I mean, the impact, as you said, of the virus inside prisons and jails is totally devastating and really off stage, you know, so we don't see it and we don't really know what's happening. And that's also very disturbing because we have some numbers and there's a little bit of testing going on. So I think there's 25,000 positive tests of people who are incarcerated right now. Went up 25% this week from last week, but that doesn't really tell us anything. I have no doubt that if 2.2 million people are incarcerated right now, a very significant number of them have been exposed to this virus because you can't social distance. And, you know, the contact we've had is not that much, but with one of the real stars of the film, Rodney Bivy Jones, he's still incarcerated. And he sent me an email the other day that, you know, he's in the dorm and somebody in his dorm died from COVID. So someone who sleeps right next to him, basically. And, you know, it's just living with that every day I don't even have words for what that must be like. And he's supposed to come home next year. So there's also hundreds of thousands of people who are, you know, near their release date as it is, who, let's say they're, you know, an extra week or month or whatever, they could get sick and not make it home. And that's been happening too. So we feel this incredible urgency for compassionate release, you know, for people who are elderly and infirm and in prison. And I think many people would be shocked how many people fit into that category. Because with the long sentences that we started to dole out, you know, 20, 30 years ago, there's people in prison, a lot of them in their 60s and 70s who have diabetes, who have, you know, kidney problems, who are in a wheelchair, and they're incarcerated. And if they get COVID-19, the healthcare there is not going to be adequate. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we haven't been releasing as many people as we should, period. Decarceration, as you said, is, you know, a huge question. We have this virus just, you know, it's like, I don't know, a ticking time bomb, you know, going through like wildfire, pick your metaphor, but it's really scary and to me unacceptable what's been going on.
And if I can just real quick, what's at stake? This is what is at stake. We have people who have either achieved college educations in prison or when they're released that have come home and contributed to society in major ways. And we're basically saying that human potential isn't important if we don't address this issue of COVID-19 in prison. Whether it's the voting rights and restoration in Florida or, you know, some of the bail movements in New York, all over the nation, people who have been incarcerated come home and want to contribute to communities. So I think we are really tapping or not allowing ourselves to tap into a resource that is beneficial for society if we don't try to address this issue in some fashion.
And then just as a pure public health matter, you know, it's not like our prisons and jails are sealed off entities. There's a lot of permeable barriers here. People who work there come and go. People are released every day. People go in and then they come back out. And so you have this virus sort of just gathering steam there, and they're just going to be agents of spreading it even more. So right. Even if we as a society didn't care, which I think would be horribly wrong and inhumane, even out of our own self-interest, we need to do something to fix this situation.
For it to get in, somebody has to bring it in. And if someone's bringing it in, it means somebody can bring it out, right?
Exactly.
And look, I've had many conversations with folks in the criminal justice system here in Massachusetts around those concerns. And we clear again, right? That's a concern of individuals that get arrested that are held on bail who come in, right? Given the lack of testing and reliable testing and the fact that the virus, you can be asymptomatic and all of the other issues here. But it's an issue of the folks that are coming in, that security, the inmates that are already behind the wall, the guards that are coming in and out, their families, right? I mean, the fear here and the way that it's given the dense population in close quarters that are almost by definition in our prison system means that after it's there, it can spread rapidly. And it was a friend, Bishop Barber down in North Carolina, was telling me quite a bit about some of the concerns that they had with a jail down there, a prison down there, after it got in, and dozens, if not hundreds of people that were infected. And so after it's there, getting it out is a real challenge.
Yeah.
But Jule, before we finish up, tell me, what was the best part of being part of BPI, and what was the best part about participating in the film?
The best part about BPI is I'm a bit of a nerd, is the access to all types of education, whether it's liberal arts for me, mathematics, philosophy for me. And I want to say building a community with people with whom I would never had thought I would have such bonds with. The best part of the film for me has been the way it has impacted people. I am so humbled by the stories of people who want to go back to school or want to go into a prison and teach. The way this film is impacting people is so phenomenal. And we're just so grateful to see people take it to the film the way they are, because it shows us that, like I said earlier when you asked, I knew it was something special going on inside the prison and the world needed to see it. And I'm so happy that the world is responding the way it is.
We've had amazing responses from around the world because the film is on Netflix now. So one of my favorite responses was a teacher in Ghana posted a photo of his classroom. It's teenage girls in a traditional Muslim dress looking at a TV screen. They're sitting on a dirt floor, and on the screen is College Behind Bars.
That's fantastic.
And he was saying that the students' stories inspired his students to want to work harder and accomplish more and believe in themselves. So that was a beautiful thought.
Thank you both. Grateful. Jule, Lynn, thank you. Thank you for your conversation. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for being willing to share your story, Jule. And Lynn, thank you for being able to tell it in the incredible way that you have. For those of you that enjoyed that conversation, Lynn offered to give us a bit of a gift here and actually show a much broader showing of the film itself. So we've got about a 4 or 5 minute trailer here for you to enjoy. And remember, you can find it on Netflix too at College Behind Bars. Take a look.
Wow, that's powerful. I'm telling you that I can see your writing improve greatly since the last time I looked at it.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where now I actually enjoy writing these papers.
Yeah, that's so true. Max Weber uses a German. Definitely with German, you have words that have meanings beyond just the surface meaning. So for example, enlightenment is a word that we would think means to think at a higher level or to gain a state of consciousness. But when you read that word enlightenment in German, it has a whole bunch of connotations of a historical period. So try to read what's underlying his words. I've always loved school. I wanted to come home and do my homework. I think it was maybe 2nd or 3rd grade, and the teacher asked us, how many of you want to go to college? My hand shot up, but I was the only one really. And that was an experience that kind of told me maybe I shouldn't broadcast that, I like school. I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I've come from a single parent home. I was born in 1975, so I guess, you could say that I grew up in the 80s. I would say that the world I grew up in was pretty tense. was pretty violent, to say the least. I remember taking on the way of thinking that don't think, just act. I remember telling myself that. And when I first did it, I got a good peer response, so I just kept on doing it. I don't recall doing any extensive writing in my high school. I didn't know the grammar and the structure in which I could express myself. I made it to the 10th grade. I had this manner of reading the first chapter, the middle chapter, and the last chapter of a book, and I was able to get by doing that. I didn't read a whole book until I came to jail.
We're all thinking more deeply about the social fabric, about our place in society, our own prejudices and our own experiences. We're just closing Othello. You know, to a kid from the Bronx, like you say Othello and you kind of shrug, like, Othello, you know, what does that mean to us, Othello? But when you start to look at the human condition, what drives us, how do we define, how do we get defined? What choices that we make, and then the circumstances through which we arrive at those choices.
Looking at Othello as a person, the decisions he made, you know, that spoke to me in a way that every decision he made contributed to his eventual demise. So, you know, obviously I can relate that to, you know, my life prior to incarceration.
What I look at from it is that we as humans, we're all vulnerable and we're all fallible. And that's why people are able to relate through the ages with these characters, even though they, in the end of the plays, they all fall. And it's tragedy. It's tragedy because we could relate to them. And you know, people out there, non-prisoners can also relate, just as we prisoners can relate. That's because we're all in the end, we're all human. You know, this idea of expanding our mind, critical thinking, that's what we get from the liberal arts education. And like I said, the maturing of the soul, you know, I think we all feel that. Compared to like 3-4 years ago, we're not the same person we were.